All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is Bill Kiray with Nice Lawson Fleming. I want to thank you for taking the time to have some of your afternoon committed to getting in some Medicare learning today. Today's session, we are going to speak specifically around the open enrollment period. I'm going to go through what the open enrollment period is, what are some do's and don'ts in terms of what we can do from a sales and marketing perspective, and then talk a little bit about functional enrollment in terms of things that impact the consumers in terms of adding product. So let's go first and foremost into what is the OEP. You know, when we're saying those three letters, and I like to make sure that when I'm using acronyms, we're all on the same page. The open enrollment period, the OEP, is the Medicare open enrollment period, and this period runs from January 1st through March 31st of each calendar year. Now, there had been an OEP previously many years ago. It had gone away with the ACA being passed, and then had just been brought back into play here starting last year. So in regards to this election period, CMS has some very specific rules pertaining both to marketing as well as how enrollment works. So first key point, and you'll find this in the 2020 Medicare marketing guidelines if you go ahead and read them, that plans, sponsors, as well as agents are prohibited from knowingly targeting or sending marketing materials to consumers specifically regarding the OEP. Now, in terms of what the open enrollment period is and who can use it, there's two groups of individuals that are eligible to utilize this enrollment period. So first and foremost, if an individual is actively enrolled in a Medicare Advantage plan as of January 1st, they are eligible to use the OEP enrollment. And again, that enrollment period is going from January 1st through March 31st of this calendar year. The second group of people who can utilize this enrollment period are Medicare beneficiaries who are new to Part B and that also enrolled into a Medicare Advantage plan using their initial coverage period. Now, with this group of individuals, it starts during the first month of their enrollment into Medicare Part B and then ends the last day of the third month. So let's say, for example, you have a consumer who goes on to Part B for a June 1st effective date. So they would have June, July, August. They would have till the end of August to utilize the OEP to make an enrollment change if, again, if their initial plan choice was a Medicare Advantage product. So during the OEP, here's what MA plan enrollees can do. So first and foremost, if they want to switch into another Medicare Advantage plan, they can do that. So if you have a consumer who's on the Aetna Gold HMO product, let's say in Westmoreland County in Pennsylvania, that consumer could then move to AARP Medicare Complete Plan 3. If they were in AARP Medicare Complete Plan 3, they could move into a UPMC HMO without RX. But again, they can switch from one Medicare Advantage plan to another. Additionally, if they're on a Medicare Advantage plan, they can jump back to original Medicare. So those are the options that are available to those consumers. And additionally, this is very important, these individuals can only use the OEP one time. And we're going to hit this a couple times in terms of our presentation. They're only allowed to use this enrollment once. Once they use it, they will lose it. Now, the effective date of that enrollment is the first of the month following receipt of that completed enrollment form. And this, again, is something we're going to hit a couple times today, just to make sure we're all super clear on it. So if the consumer uses the OEP election on January 15th, their new coverage package will be in effect for February 1st. If they make this decision on March 10th, it would be effective for April 1st. So the consumer does not need to wait until April 1st for their new coverage choice to become effective. It's going in very similar to a traditional SEP, first of the month following receipt of the enrollment. So in terms of adding and dropping coverage, again, consumers can add or drop Part D coverage. Now, when we talk about this, what we mean is if a consumer is on an MAPD plan, they could go to an MA-only plan. If the consumer is on perhaps original Medicare with a standalone Part D product, you know, they would not be able to do that. Again, we said if you're on original Medicare, not able to use it. If they're on perhaps an MA-only private fee-for-service with a standalone drug plan, they could switch that Part D coverage. So that, again, is something that you want to keep in mind when it comes to the OEP. So again, quick note here. If you have an individual who's enrolled in Original Medicare, this enrollment period does not allow them to join a Medicare Advantage plan. So that's very critical to understand. Again, the last thing, and I don't know how many people this really impacts, but if you have a consumer who's on an MSA product or a cost plan, those consumers do not have the ability to utilize this product, even though technically those are MA plans. MSAs and cost plans are exempt from being able to utilize the OEP. Now, from a marketing perspective, let's kind of talk through some things that you can do, some things that you can't do, and then we'll kind of deep dive a little bit into some strategies in our frequently asked questions section. So in terms of things that you can do, obviously you can market to someone who's an agent that hasn't made an enrollment decision yet. This wouldn't be utilizing the OEP election form, but you can market to those folks. If you have consumers who are in a market where there's a 5-star plan available, like Dallas, for example, that's an area where recently they got a 5-star product, you can market to those consumers. You can certainly continue to market to dual eligible and low income subsidy consumers. That's okay. You can additionally, if you're getting a proactive request from a consumer, send them marketing materials, as well as have a one-on-one appointment with them. Now, in terms of things you can't do, and then we're going to look at kind of ways, not necessarily to get around this, but to operate within the rules and still try to generate sales activity. You cannot send marketing materials to a Medicare Advantage enrollee during the OEP that are specifically promoting the ability to utilize the open enrollment period. So, for example, it wouldn't be permissible for you to send direct mail to your existing consumer base or potentially to prospective consumers talking about the OEP, talking about how it runs from January 1st to the 31st. That's something that you can't do, referencing that enrollment period. I'll be honest with you, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me why CMS would create an election period and then say don't talk about it. I don't know that specifically makes a whole lot of sense to me. However, those are the rules of engagement in terms of what CMS has created. Additionally, something that you can't do is, let's say that you had 20 consumers that were on potentially a Humana private fee-for-service plan with you, and those 20 consumers got other plans through a different agent. What you're not permitted to do is contact those consumers and say to them, for example, hey, I know that you used to be my client on this Humana private fee-for-service plan. I know that you've terminated that coverage. Would you be interested in talking about potentially a different plan because you can switch between now and March 31st? That additionally is something that that's not permissible. Lastly, you're not allowed to engage in agent activities like formal or informal sales events that specifically target the OEP as an opportunity to make sales. And we'll talk a little bit about kind of the lines of differentiation there and ways to make sure you're operating within the rules but still being able to generate sales. So let's take a look at some of these frequently asked questions. And all of these are sort of consolidations of questions that we've gotten from agents over the course of the last 3 to 4 weeks, sort of as the AEP ended, and agents are calling in saying, okay, I know that we have the OEP now. What is it that we can do to try to utilize this enrollment period but still do it compliantly? So here's the first question. Can agents contact consumers that they weren't able to enroll during the AEP? So this very well could be people that attended sales events, people that attended your educational events, people that you may have had appointments with, people that may have submitted lead cards to you. So of consumers that you may or may not have had contact with during the AEP, are you able to go and now try to enroll these folks during the OEP? And realistically, this all comes down to how you acquired permission to contact. So let's talk about this real quick. So let's say that you did a lead drop, let's say with like Lead Concepts, and you ended up getting a whole bunch of lead responses back in late October, early November, and you were working those leads. You were calling, you were leaving messages, running appointments with the people you talked to. If you have a consumer who, number one, submitted a lead card to you, secondly, you were never able to make contact with them, and the lead is less than 90 days old, those are consumers that you still have permission to contact for. Those are consumers that you could reach out to right now. Again, assuming that the lead is less than 90 days old, and try to determine, hey, Mr. Smith, just wanted to finally get in contact with you. You had submitted a request for information to me earlier in the year. Wanted to determine, did you make a plan selection? Are you satisfied with your plan? Is there any other assistance you need at this time? And it may very well be that consumer says, yeah, you know what, I made a plan selection. I'm dissatisfied with my plan. I really wish that I could switch it. At that point, you could say, well, actually, Mr. Smith, you do have the opportunity to switch it. So that would be one scenario of a group of consumers you could proactively be reaching out to. Additionally, there are some times that consumers will give you permission to contact and that you can document it, where they say, you know what, I'd really like to talk to you after January 1st. I think that I should be satisfied with my plan, but maybe you can check in with me in January and see if I've changed my mind about how my new plan for 2020 is performing. And that may be, again, another group of consumers you can reach out to. So here's another question. What happens if agents, through marketing for MedSup or Turning 65, come into contact with individuals who are eligible to use the OEP? Now, this is a really good question, because any of you who've been in the business for a while know that many times you may do a lead drop, whether it's direct mail or newspaper advertisements or otherwise, and the text of the advertisement, be it the card or perhaps a flyer, is specific in terms of what you're trying to do. What is the offer? Who is the group of people you're trying to talk to? One example I can think of is there's lots of times that we have agents who send out Medicare cards about Medicare supplement and new rates available in your state. Give me a call to explore options that may be available to you. Well, you're clearly marketing for Medicare supplement. Most of the time, agents do those, and they're looking for consumers who are probably between 68 and 75, who may have got some rate increases and now they're looking to switch. Many of you understand that you're going to get calls from people who don't have Medicare supplement, who sometimes have original Medicare, but they're just looking for more information. So if you're very clearly mailing to the group of people that matches with the advertisement that you're utilizing, and you get in contact with people who could use the OEP, it's perfectly appropriate to have conversations with those folks and potentially utilize that. So again, are you mailing a group of consumers that's consistent with the design of your piece? And then is the piece compliant in and of itself? And if you can say yes to those two items, then certainly that's permitted to use open enrollment period as an eligible way to enroll and switch those consumers' coverage. So the next one, actually just got this question earlier in the week. Can agents contact their existing clients to make sure their plan is working for them? And this is one that absolutely is permissible. We always tell the agents that work with us for Medicare programs that the most important thing that you can do between January 1 and April 1st, or with a T65 consumer in their first 90 days of enrollment, is to check back in with them. Make sure, did you get your ID cards? Have you been able, if it's got an OTC catalog, have you been able to use that? Have you been to see your doctor? How is the plan working for you? Have you been able to successfully get your drugs at the drugstore? Looking for those things to ensure member satisfaction. Always in your best interest to do that. Now, during the course of checking in with that consumer, whether it's during the open enrollment period or not, we tell agents all the time, ask for referrals. Ask. You will never get a referral if you don't ask. One thing I would tell you specifically is that you don't need to say to the consumer, hey, if you have a friend who's dissatisfied with their plan, I can help them switch between now and March 31st. But again, what you certainly can do is continue to say to consumers in whichever way seems appropriate for you, hey, just want to make sure that you're really satisfied with what we've done here and the advice that I'm giving you, the insight that I'm giving you. If you know anyone else who could benefit, by working with me, to make sure that they're in an appropriate plan for their health needs, I'd really appreciate it if you let them know to contact me. And that's another way that you can obviously generate interest and potential sales opportunities during the OEP. So let's talk a little bit about agent and client interactions during this period of time and how we think that will function. So we talked a little bit about those check-ins. We really think that agents should be contacting their consumers at the 30-day mark, 60-day mark, 90-day mark. The question would be, during the OEP, when you're making those check-ins, can agents proactively inform their clients that they've got the ability to make a plan choice if they're not satisfied. So in terms of that situation, the agent can only inform the consumer that they can make a plan change if the beneficiary indicates that they're dissatisfied. You know, that if they say, you know what, I really don't like the PCP copay on this, or you know what, I thought all my drugs were covered, but I got prescribed a couple of new drugs since we made this, made our plan change for this year. I really wish that I could switch it. And in that scenario, the agent can absolutely talk about any applicable election period, including the OEP, that the consumer could use. So when we talk about, and CMS uses this language, something being initiated by the beneficiary, what are we talking about here? So here are some examples. One example would be a consumer says to you, I really don't like this PPO plan that I selected. Can I pick another product? Or do I have to keep this plan until next October? Or do I have a chance to change before then? Or if a consumer simply says to you, can you tell me what other plans that you represent in this area? Those are all examples of things that if a consumer says to you, they have opened the door for you to then talk to them about the OEP, as well as how they can utilize it to potentially improve their coverage situation. So another item here, and we got this question quite recently, what does an agent need to do during OEP to show that they're marketing a special election period rather than marketing the OEP? And the particular agent who was asking this question does a lot of informal events. Actually, a gentleman in New York City who drives around with his van. He sets it up at certain locations, sets up a tent, and staffs that area all day long, talking to consumers and answering questions for them. So if it's a formal event, or even at an informal event, to be quite honest with you, the agent's got to be clear as to the fact that the purpose of the event is to market Medicare plans to people who may be able to qualify for an SEP. Now, if it is a formal sales event and you're doing a presentation, like you've got a PowerPoint deck and a screen and all of that, you've clearly got to use a presentation that's been approved by CMS. And that presentation would have to be sure that it doesn't focus, and these are two key words, primarily or exclusively on the OEP. Now, that means that you can certainly talk about all sorts of election periods that are available to consumers that they could utilize to switch coverage. But as long as the presentation is not primarily or exclusively geared towards the OEP, it's something that you can do. So here was another one. One of our agents down in Georgia had asked this question. I thought it was tremendous. Said to our sales manager who runs that market for us, can I wear a button or a shirt that says, ask me about the OEP? Or, wear a button that says OEP question mark. So the answer to that is no. That would not be permissible, but there's nothing that says that the agent could not wear a button that says, ask me about Medicare plans. That would be something that would be okay. So we had talked a little bit earlier about one of our agents in New York that, he has a van, but we've seen other folks with RVs that drive around and conduct these informal sales events at various points in time. Is that something that an agent can do during the OEP? And the answer would be yes, but the agent can discuss election periods of all types with the consumers if they're asking about their plan change options. Certainly can't focus exclusively on the OEP, but there's no reason why you can't talk about it in that setting and potentially find areas where you can gain enrollments and help consumers. All right, so let's just hit the last couple pieces on enrollment guidance. I think this is important so that we all understand how this will work in the event that we find a consumer dissatisfied with their product and we submit an app using the OEP. So CMS's guidance has said that the effective date of a policy utilizing the OEP enrollment would be the nearest possible date, so the first of the month following receipt of the election. So if a consumer completed an app and submitted it on February 1st, they would be receiving a 3/1 effective date. So here's another good one, and this actually happens, surprisingly enough, more often than you would think. Let's say that there's a client who ends up submitting 2 apps during the OEP. Which one of them is going to go through? So this particular example is one that we've seen that a member submitted a paper app with an agent. So they talked to an agent, they had an appointment, they sat down, they did a needs analysis, picked a plan, agent collected the paper app, sent it in. Then either the same day or the next day, the consumer calls into a call center and does this app electronically, and the call center ends up submitting that app online. So the way that this would work, again, is whichever enrollment was processed first, that enrollment would be the one that would count, and the second enrollment, whether it was the online enrollment or the paper one, that secondary enrollment would be one that would bounce. Because again, you can use the open enrollment period just once during that period of time. So that's the extent of the content we've got for you today. We certainly have some times if you have some questions. Happy to take those from you if anyone wants to jump in and ask. I'm looking here to try to see if I've got questions in the chat. Where did it go? There we go. Got the screen back up. So anyone who has any questions, feel free to unmute your phone and ask away.
Hey, Bill?
Yes?
Yeah, Dave Vivenzio. How are you?
Hey, Dave. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thanks. Just a quick question, and I think I know this answer, but I just wanted to make sure. If a current customer of mine has a Medicare Advantage, and it's in the OEP right now, and wants to go back to original Medicare and grab a Medigap policy and a Part D plan, that is acceptable, correct?
Yes, absolutely. So if you have that consumer that's on the MAPD plan, the way that you would facilitate that is determine which prescription drug plan would be most appropriate for them. And then when you submit the prescription drug plan, OEP would be your election period. When that PDP app is processed, it will remove the consumer from the MA plan and return them to original Medicare.
Okay. And then should I wait until that gets processed for them to do the Medigap or the Medicare Sup?
You know what? Generally what I've advised agents to do is that because most of the time that you're talking there, that Medicare Supplement app is going to be underwritten. It's probably not going to be in an open enrollment or GI situation. So I would usually advise submitting them at the same time, just in case you submit that Med Sup app and for whatever reason they get declined, and that happens. I mean, any agent that's worked in this business for a year or longer knows that there's been many times where we take a Medicare Supplement app on a consumer, they give us all no answers to the knockout questions on the Med Sup app, and then all of a sudden, you get these strange medical conditions that come out of nowhere that the consumer says, well, I didn't think that I had that. So I would advise starting with the Med Sup app at the same time as the PDP. That way it gives you some time to ensure that the app goes through underwriting correctly and you don't get caught flat-footed on the other side.
Very good. Thanks, Bill.
Yep, absolutely. We've got time for a couple more questions if anyone has them. All right. Well, it sounds like either I did a tremendous job of answering all the questions given the content, or I bored everyone to sleep. I'll just let you guys be the judge of that. Hey, really appreciate you jumping on today. Look for some more content for us coming real soon. And certainly, if you have any other questions that you'd like to call in, talk to me, talk to any of our sales staff. We're here to help you. Thank you so much for your business, and have a great day. Take care.